Well, people of God's delight, welcome to part 5 of a 5-part series called You Got This at Belle Meade United Methodist Church. I'm recording this from my home studio because I had some technical difficulties on Sunday. So what I'm going to do is summarize part 5 and in the process do an overall summary of the 5-part series. It's called You Got This because it refers to baseball. When you're at bat, somebody's yelling out, "You got this, come on, you got this, come on, number 5, let's hit this." And also to the pitcher, "Come on, you got this, guy, throw strikes, we got you, let's go, come on." That kind of thing. So "you got this" refers to Little League affirmation where teammates are calling out to their teammates encouragement that they can do this, they're in charge. The 5th in the series was called Money as a Building Block of Shame, and the subtitle is The Joneses Don't Live Here. So week 1 was talking about the most difficult thing in sports is to hit a round ball with a round bat. The sweet spot on a ball is about the size of a dime, and the sweet spot on a bat is about the size of your small finger. And lining those two sweet spots up and then putting it someplace where nobody's standing so they won't catch it or throw you out is very difficult. In fact, if you did that successfully 3 times out of 10, you'd probably make the Baseball Hall of Fame. You would have failed 7 times out of 10, more than twice as many failures. So baseball is about progress, not perfection. Babe Ruth, who was notably a home run king for decades till his record was finally broken, also led the majors in strikeouts, 5 separate seasons. So you got to be willing to swing for the fences and take your strikeouts along with that. Progress, not perfection. We define shame as being that sense, that feeling of not being good enough, not measuring up, not pleasing other people, certainly not deserving anything. Shame is not that you're a bad person, it's that you're defective. So you haven't done anything wrong, it's just you don't measure up. We talked about shame triggers, those thoughts, that stinking thinking that come to us, and we say to ourselves, we're a fake, we're a fraud, something must be wrong with us, who do we think we are, that kind of thing. And there are various situations that can set off a shame trigger and release those feelings within us. And we may not be able to define them, but we can sense what's going on in our body. Is my heart rate advancing? Do I feel like throwing up? Is my throat tight? Do I feel like I'm going to burst into tears, or my cheeks red? Something like that. So we can describe how we're feeling, and then what are we thinking? Like, oh gosh, who am I? I don't belong here. What am I saying to myself? This is stupid. I'm stupid. And what do we do? Maybe we freeze. And then how we can get out of that by rubbing our wrist right here where they take your pulse, very gently say, I'm competent, I'm confident, I'm capable. The 3 C's, and help pull ourselves out of that shame trigger. Get back on track. Week 2, we talked about Little League affirmation, what happens when you live with it and what it looks like when you live without it. An example of living with it was the young man at the parking garage who showed up with my car from the valet before I even had a chance to basically get to the pay station. He was so quick. And then there was the fellow who didn't show up to baseball camp because he felt like he wasn't good enough to play with the other players, even though he got a scholarship to a D1 school, threw away a great education and a chance for a successful baseball career. We recognized language of big and little, so language that is uplifting and affirming. We want to listen to that and promote that and use it ourselves. Language that is belittling, demeaning, squashing other people, putting one person down and one person up. We want to avoid that. Excuse me. And we talked about my granddaughter Lorelei and her bike, how she made it down a very steep hill without crashing by telling herself that she can do this, she's okay, and she said, I've got this. And she looked at me and said, you say that all the time, Papa. an illustration of a little girl who is marinating in Little League affirmation. She's going to face challenging and scary situations in the future. Some of them she'll successfully navigate, some of them she won't, but she'll do it with courage, not fear, knowing that she's okay. She's got this. Week 3 was opening day, Hope Revisited. We looked at Genesis, the first chapter of Genesis, and how every day that something was made, God said it's good. So plants, the earth, animals, birds, it's all good. And then the day that people showed up, God said it was very good. So the illustration there is all of creation, including humanity, is good and very good. That sets the stage for our theology of Little League affirmation. We said that this is mythology, and mythology is not untrue. In fact, just the opposite. It's so true, the only way we can talk about it is with a story. We refuted the language of less than in church, sinners in the hand of an angry God, or totally depraved individuals, that kind of thing. And we encourage people to listen to good news. We also looked at other examples in the New Testament about life, Jesus coming to give people abundant life, and a life here is a life in relationship with God, shalom, if you will, that sense of perfect order in creation as in Genesis, that kind of life, and abundantly, have it so abundantly that it can't be measured, can't be contained. Week 4 was persevering through the long haul season, that you can't live from mountaintop experiences alone. As great as they are, as fun as they are, it's great to have everything going right and life just being grand all the time, but that just is not the way life is. But on the other hand, life is not a constant series of trudging through the deep, dark valley. You can't live in that chronic stress for very long. It'll literally kill you. It's also not the fact that we're just enduring life like a long road trip across the prairie. We are looking to cultivate a sense of adventure, refute arrival psychology. That's the psychology that says this current situation is not good. Some situation in the future will be better. So there's that one up, one down thing again. So I'll be okay when I graduate. I'll be okay if I get married. I'll be okay if I get that house. I'll be okay when I get that raise, so on and so forth. That's arrival psychology. We refuted that and acknowledged that now is the time to focus our attention. And we talked about forgiveness and tolerance and acceptance and all the components of Little League affirmation. Week 5, we talked about money as a building block of shame. That we talked about the money lessons we learned as children. Money doesn't grow on trees. Buy cash, not on credit. Save for the future. All those kinds of things, as well as those people are poor because they're lazy. Other messages that we heard growing up. I reminded people that, as we said at the beginning, you are not the number on your paycheck. And even though we say that, sometimes it's hard for us to believe that, especially if we've experienced a protracted period of unemployment, like I did, 2.5 years being unemployed. Not only was I not the number on my paycheck, I had no paycheck. And I found myself getting angry. I found myself being very jealous of people who had jobs. And it was tough to keep going. And tough to remember that I'm not a number on some paycheck. I'm a unique child of God, and of all the permutations and combinations of genes and chromosomes available in the history of the universe, there's never been anybody like me. And there'll never be anybody like me ever again. I'm totally unique, and I have an absolute right to be here. So we then talked about gathering your team. Who is your team? Financial person who can help you navigate various investments and that sort of thing, but somebody who's going to help you talk about what's enough, talk about contentment, not what's your number. talking about an attorney who will help you organize your will and your finances and your legacy. Somebody who's good with taxes, so an accountant who can help with the right decisions and cash flow, especially in retirement. A pastor who can help you with funeral arrangements and a funeral service, that kind of thing. All those people who can help build a plan, a program for you so you can actually see how blessed you are and that you do have things under control. That will be extremely helpful in countering that nagging voice that, oh boy, I wish I could keep up with the Joneses. That's not what it's about. It's about contentment. It's about abundant life. So we then talked about a person named Brian J. Pemberton, who's a pastor at a Presbyterian church in the Bay Area in California. And the title of the article, coming from Sojourners Magazine, May 2019, says, "Never Good Enough." Oh my gosh, this is exactly what we've been talking about in class. And the subtitle is, "The Shame of Being Poor Can Linger Long After Poverty is Left Behind." He grew up very, very poor and was always aware of the fact that it was ontological. It made up his essence. It wasn't that he was just living in poverty. Poverty is the absence of resources, so he was aware of that. But poor went deeper than that. It described who he was ontologically. He was without resources. He was without money or connections or any of that sort of thing. And that's where the identity of being poor is so insidious. Even though now he's got a good job and he's got degrees from famous universities and all of that, he still thinks of himself as poor. So ontologically, he sees himself as less than. He's never quite good enough. He doesn't fit in. He doesn't belong. And that has implications for his children and how they live. And he's passing on that sentiment, even though his family is far different from his family of origin. Well, once again, baseball to the rescue, because we talked about the infield, especially the infield, is a level playing field. In baseball, every single dimension of the infield is exactly the same, no matter where you are. Outfields vary widely, and we've said that's because there were no outfields when the game was first invented. The outfield just became where fans stood, and they got closer or farther away depending on the fielding and physical constraints, whatever. And then, of course, Boston, with a 30-foot tall green monster, it was put there because it was so short. People were cranking home runs over the fence too easily, so they built that really high wall. But the infields are all the same distance between the base paths, or between the bases on the base path. It's the same distance from the top of the mound to home plate. Even the pitching rubber is the same dimension. The plate is the same dimension. The distance from the apex of the plate to the beginning of the outfield grass is the same distance everywhere you go. So in a very real sense, baseball played on these fields is a level playing field. Everybody has the same chance. Now, you bring to it your skills, you bring to it your attitude, you can control your effort, you can't control the weather, you can't control who's umping, the strike zone that umpires create, and every game is a little bit different. As long as it's consistent, both pitchers and hitters will adjust to that. Sometimes it's a little wider, sometimes it's a little higher, and people can adjust as long as it stays consistent. But you can't control a bad call. You can control your effort, you can control your response, and you can control your attitude. Like you're going to get into the game, you're going to do what you can to help your team win, and you're just going to suck less. You won't be perfect, but through practice and repetition and so on, you're going to get better. It's progress, not perfection. So that's baseball. how it can help in this situation, help us see that if we would apply ourselves to Little League affirmation, the sense of baseball, and see the world as a level playing field. And I know it's not exactly level. People have different advantages in education and neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. But to the extent that we can create a level playing field within our society, we'll experience that sense of Little League affirmation at work in our daily lives. Then I asked for discussion. We had some good discussion, and I finished up with an evaluation. I asked them, what's the one takeaway that you have from this series? And I got a number of really great responses. Obviously, the most common one was, I've got this, realizing that, I'm capable, I'm competent, and I can confidently face my future. I can face those challenging and scary situations, just as our granddaughter did, going down that steep hill on her bike for the first time, and realizing how important it is to keep that affirmation alive in everybody's situation, all their relationships. Then I asked, would I recommend, would you recommend this series? Yes, no. And if you would, if you know somebody, who would I contact? And a number of people mentioned the youth pastor at this church. And then there were other recommendations as well, but overwhelmingly people said yes. In fact, nobody said no. And then the third question was coaching. What coaching would you have for me? And I said, baseball is about progress, not perfection. I'm interested in getting better and better at what I do and what I present. And I got some good suggestions. One was to have more illustrations. One was to have more discussion, a longer period for discussion. We had a little bit at the end of each session, but they wanted a little bit more. They liked that. And they suggested that I look for ways to give this class on a series of Wednesday nights, a whole different audience. And then a number of people said they'd like to see this delivered to youth as well. So all in all, it was a very great series, a 5-part series, all June, every Sunday in June at the Adult Ed. 2 classes came together to form one, and we had a great experience. And a Little League affirmation, it really is an antidote to shame in our everyday life. Baseball is a reliable antidote to shame in everyday life. So thanks for watching, and thanks for being a part of this. Those of you who are reviewing this online, I appreciate you being at the sessions. Those of you who are seeing this for the first time, please consider having me come into your church, your school, your camp situation, work situation, wherever. And it doesn't have to be 5 parts. We could do it in 1 or 2 sessions, or however you want to do it. Look on my website, www.gregorybancroft.com. There's all kinds of information about how to book me for sessions. And please consider using Swing for the Fences as a fundraising tool. You can also find that information on my website and how to go about that. Basically, you buy it for half price and you sell it for full price and keep the difference. So it's a lot better than cookie dough. It doesn't have a shelf life on it. The book is also available as an e-reader online. You can buy it in e-form, electronic form, and also audio. You can buy it through Audible. And then there's a listening sample on my website. You can hear what it sounds like. But all of those options are available, as well as hardcover. And Betsy's Day at the Game is still available on my website, which is a cute story. The little girl who goes to a baseball game with her grandfather learns how to keep score, and the reader learns how to keep score with that, and they can practice at the end. And there's also a reading curriculum available on my website that was developed by a group of college students as a class project that meets 9 of the Common Core standards for children's literature. It's really well done and cute illustrations. I think you'll enjoy it. So any teachers you know, like in 4th or 5th grade, who are looking for some interesting project, a reading project, and the book itself is a Mom's Choice Gold Award. Penny Marshall has endorsed it. It's gotten a lot of great feedback from the San Francisco Chronicle to all over the place. That's it for now, and please continue to tune in. There'll be blogs and videos and speeches presented here on, and I appreciate your following and your comments and feedback. Blessings and thanks.